everybody, welcome back to another video. By the way, before I actually start, I just want to apologise for the background. This is currently the best room in the house. This is, or was, our bedroom. We don't currently have a bed because the floorboards are getting pulled up. This is just the reality of how we live at the moment, so please try and ignore that. So I thought I'd switch things up a little bit and do more of a chatty video instead of our usual renovation vlogs, and basically just share some tips and some bits of advice that we've learned along the way doing our renovation. So if you haven't seen any of our previous videos, my name is Neva and my fiance Louis and I bought a 1970s renovation back in December. So we've lived here for about 8 months now, and we're probably about 2 months into quite big renovations. So we've done quite a lot of extending to this house. So we have extended the width of the house basically by knocking down the old garage, making that a little bit bigger and making it double storey. So we've done a double storey extension on the side of the house, and we've also done a 2-metre single storey extension on the back of the house. So it's difficult to say what point in our renovation we're actually at. We're 2 months into the actual renovation. The builders started in June and they've actually finished. So we just got the builders to do the shell of the extension basically, and it's now up to us to do the plumbing, the electrics, the plasterboarding, all of that stuff. So the builders have finished and gone, they've done their bit, but things will probably slow down a little bit now just because Louis, he's an electrician, so he's doing a lot of the electrics himself, but he's just having to do it after work, so he's working very long days at the moment. But yeah, we're just sort of like plodding along now and doing what we can, like on nights and weekends and things like that. But yeah, I'm just going to share my top 5 tips that we've sort of learned up to this point. Obviously things are always going to be different depending on your situation, if you're doing a renovation or thinking about doing a renovation. These tips relate to our situation. So we have lived in the house the whole time that we've been renovating. If you're doing a renovation but maybe he's not living in it, then that will be very different. These tips that I'm going to share are probably more if you are living in a renovation. But yeah, anyway, I'm just going to jump straight into it with tip number 1. So tip number 1 is actually something that somebody else commented on one of my videos, like a few videos back I think, and I couldn't agree more, and that was to basically get rid of as much as you can before starting the renovation. So this is something that we didn't really do purely because I think we just went into it quite like laid back, which is fine. It's not actually been as stressful as I thought it was going to be, but there has definitely been a lot of moments of like very heightened stress, and that's been more around the living conditions. So I couldn't agree more with that comment. I would definitely declutter before starting a renovation, get rid of as much as you possibly can. And I would also say, if you have the option of storing some of your things at your parents' house or friends' houses, if anybody's got garages and they've got some space that they can store some of your things, I would definitely consider that, or even going with like a storage unit or something. Again, obviously it depends what type of renovation you're doing. Ours affected basically all of downstairs. It didn't affect upstairs so much, so basically all of our things are upstairs. But if you have watched any of our previous renovation vlogs, you'll have probably seen that a lot of what we did was moving stuff. Basically we moved stuff from downstairs to upstairs and then from room to room upstairs, and yeah, we've spent a lot of time just moving things around the house just to make space for whatever was happening. Obviously once the extension started downstairs, we just sort of took it day by day, and then the builder would say to us, right, we need to be in this room tomorrow, so you're gonna have to move all that stuff. So then we would spend all night the night before moving everything. If you could just get rid of all of that stuff, if you know where, if you're doing an extension for example and it's going to affect certain rooms in the house, I would say be prepared and try and move all of that stuff and get it out of the house if possible, because obviously another issue was the dust, which is just on another level. Everything that we own is basically covered in dust now, and things that we didn't get rid of before we're probably going to have to now anyways, because everything is ruined. So then moving on to tip number 2, this is probably more advice than it is a tip, and it's something that we didn't sort of consider, or we didn't know was gonna come up, and that is basically if you are renovating quite an old house. Our house isn't actually that old, it was built in 1970, which really isn't that old. There's definitely older houses, but we are basically like relocating the kitchen, so we're moving the kitchen sink, and we didn't know that this was a thing until the builders just said to me one day, you're basically going to need to run a new water pipe from the mains outside, like on the public footpath, underneath the house to where the new kitchen sink is going to be. And when the builders said that to me, I was like, right, okay, how do I do that? And they were just sort of like, oh, ring the water board, they'll come out, they'll tell you what you need to do, which wasn't really the case. I did ring the water board, and they basically said we need to lay this water pipe, or like get it underneath the house up to our boundary, and then obviously they need to come and connect it up to the water mains, because the water mains are on the public footpath. We obviously can't do anything with that, we wouldn't know what to do anyway. However, if I'm not 100% sure on this, don't like quote me, but if you have a lead pipe that runs from the mains, usually to under your kitchen sink, so obviously where like your stop tap and everything is, that is usually under the kitchen sink. If that's a lead pipe, and I think your plumber should probably be able to tell you whether it's lead or not. If it is lead, the water board will replace that free of charge, because it needs changing to like the new plastic pipes. So I think that lead pipes stopped being fitted from about maybe like the 60s. So if you've got a house that's maybe like 1960s or older, there's a good chance that it might be a lead pipe, and they'll replace that free of charge. Ours ended up being copper, so that meant that we are going to have to pay to get it changed. We needed to get it changed anyways, because we were moving the location of our kitchen sink. I think with like a water pipe, you don't really want to add like connections onto it, so it's not ideal. It wouldn't have been ideal for us to have just added an additional pipe to the old pipe and ran that to where the new kitchen sink was going to be. Ideally you just want one pipe going from the mains to your kitchen sink basically. Plus we have added, well, we are going to be adding an ensuite and extending our bathroom. So our plumber also said if we didn't replace that pipe, there was a good chance that our water pressure would be quite poor, which obviously would have just been disappointing if we didn't change the pipe and we were just like, oh, it'll be fine, and then the water pressure was rubbish throughout the house. We might as well put this new pipe in when our house is a building site anyways, basically. So yeah, that's just been something that was sort of like an additional job that we weren't expecting. It's also an additional cost that we weren't expecting. So yeah, just something to consider if you are, for example, moving your kitchen sink, or even if you're not. I would definitely just bear in mind that you might need to replace that pipe, and it might be quite a messy job because Louis has basically had to dig a trench right across our front garden, and yeah, it's just been a whole situation. But just something to be aware of if you are renovating an older house. So that leads on quite nicely to tip number 3, which is probably quite an obvious one, but basically always have contingency money in your budget. So I would definitely recommend having at least a few £1,000 like contingency budget, or just backup money, just some money set aside for any unwelcomed issues that you might come across. Obviously, again, this completely depends on the size of renovation that you're doing. Ours, to be honest, I think ours has ended up being a bigger renovation than I thought it was going to be, in terms of like the disruption that it's caused like the rest of the house. However, we've actually been really lucky so far, touch wood, that we've not came across any like major problems. I was worried before starting the extension and stuff that the builders were going to find something, or they were going to come and say to us, your whole roof needs replacing, it's going to cost you 10 grand or something like that. I was worried about that, but we've been really lucky so far and there's not been anything major. The only thing that's cropped up really has been that water pipe that I've just mentioned. But yeah, I would definitely just have that money set aside, really just to avoid additional stress. I'm sure if anybody has done a renovation or is in the middle of a renovation or anything like that, you will know that a lot of the stress comes from the like financial side of things. So yeah, I would definitely just save yourself a lot of stress and keep a chunk of money set aside, and then hopefully you won't need to touch that money and you can use it for whatever you want. Once the renovations are done, you've got a little bit of extra money there. But don't stretch yourself too far and not have any money to fall back on. Basically, it will just save you a lot of stress. So tip number 4, again, is probably quite an obvious one, but just a really important one, I think, and that is to find yourself a good builder. I can't express how important it actually is to find a good builder, somebody that's reliable, somebody that you trust, and somebody that sort of almost like cares about you and what you're doing and your situation. It's no good just getting a builder in just to like get the job done and them sort of not look out for you. Whatever builder you go for is going to be spending a lot of time probably like around you in your house, and you need to have quite a good relationship with them. And the number one thing that I would probably look out for is reliability. If the builder turns up when they say they're going to turn up, that straight away is a massive pro. When we were looking for builders, I think Louis rang about 5 different builders, and out of all 5, one turned up, and that ended up being our builder. And he turned up literally to the minute that he said he was going to turn up. He gave us an estimate, he gave us a bit of a quote. Every time we rang him, he answered, or he rang us back, and we just sort of kept in touch between the time of him giving us our quote and the build actually starting. We just kept in touch with him, and he was brilliant. If we wanted him to come and have a look at anything, he would always come when he said he was going to. And yeah, I think that's probably the biggest reason why our renovation hasn't been that stressful, is because we've had a really good builder. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard just from like friends and family that have had really bad experiences with their builder, and people's extensions or whatever they've been doing has gone on for like 8 months because the builder just doesn't turn up, or whatever the situation is. Our builder was so good. We were really lucky as well that we didn't have any like massive delays with materials or deliveries or anything like that. Obviously that's something that can't really be helped, but we were lucky in that sense. But our builder basically just takes no rubbish and gets the job done. But he also like cares about his customers, you know, like he wouldn't let us do anything that wasn't going to be worth doing, or he would just tell us how it was basically. And he also just would help us out if we had any like additional jobs. He would be like, yeah, no problem, I'll do that for you. And yeah, he was just brilliant from start to finish. And basically when you're doing a renovation, it's a very stressful situation anyway, but if you can get a builder that doesn't add to your stress, that is exactly what you want. So yeah, just look around for a builder, even if it means having to delay things a little bit. It'll definitely be worth it, trust me. So then the final tip number 5, is basically to plan everything inside out. Plan every aspect of your renovation well in advance. This is something that I thought I'd done, to be honest. I mean, we've been planning this extension for a long time anyway, so we were pretty certain of like how we wanted it. Obviously with me doing my interior design course as well, planning is something that is always like essential when you're doing anything. However, I still didn't feel prepared enough. When the builders were asking me certain questions, obviously they had our plans, but our builders checked with us before doing certain things, like before they put certain windows in and did the stud walls and things like that. He checked with us first exactly where we wanted them, how big the windows were going to be, etc, etc. But yeah, I still didn't feel prepared enough for like certain things that he was asking me. And with our double story extension, we sort of pushed ourselves as much as we could to get that double story. However, we don't plan on like finishing that upstairs extension for a long time, so that's going to be a master bedroom with like an ensuite and everything. However, at the moment we don't need that. That's just something that we really wanted to get done while we were doing the rest of the building work, but that's something that isn't a high priority for us. We would obviously rather get like the kitchen and get downstairs finished, and then the main bathroom, that's a high priority. But yeah, that master bedroom and ensuite is something that we'll come to maybe in a few years time. So we haven't really planned exactly how we were going to have the ensuite, how we're going to have the bedroom, things like that. But all of those little things matter when you're thinking about where to put windows, especially, and especially in bathrooms. Always plan your bathroom and where you're going to put certain things and where you're going to put the window, because obviously if you put a window somewhere before you've planned the bathroom, and then when it comes to it you can't put your shower where you actually want to put it because there's a window there, you're going to have to then plan your bathroom around that window. So this is something that I sort of tried to do, but it's very difficult when, especially for us, we've basically had an entire house to plan, and it's very difficult to plan every room when it's not going to happen for quite a long time. But yeah, I would definitely say no matter what size renovation you're doing, what size extension you're doing, anything like that, plan everything to the last detail. Plan where radiators are going to go, obviously where windows are going to go, where all of your furniture is going to go, so that you don't make any impulsive decisions while the build is like happening, and then when it comes to like furnishing that room or whatever, it's not working how you want it to work. But yeah, I would basically just say that you can never be too prepared, and it will also avoid stress again if you're fully prepared, you know exactly what you're doing, where everything wants to go, and when the builders ask you questions, or your plumber or your electrician or whatever, you can confidently tell them where you want things, what you're doing. Basically just do whatever you can to minimise stress, because it's a very overwhelming situation anyway, so the least stress that is created, the better it's going to be for you. So yeah, that is my 5 top tips, bits of advice if you are planning to do a renovation at some point. Maybe if you're just about to start renovation, or even if you're like into a renovation, you can still take some of those tips on board, and hopefully it will just help you get through whatever it is that you're doing. But yeah, like I say, there's probably definitely more tips that I could think of now, but I don't want to ramble on for too long, so I might do one of these videos every couple of months depending on how we go with our renovation. But yeah, I really hope that some of these tips have been helpful for you, and if you are wanting to keep up to date with our renovation, then make sure to subscribe. And yeah, hopefully we've got some really exciting things coming up over the next few weeks. So I really hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.